Well, family, good afternoon. This is Kevin Binion, and welcome to Under the Influence, a place where we talk about leadership and unique perspectives in leadership. And I'm very glad to be here with you today. And we are excited about not just the broadcast, not just the content, but also about our special guest that is going to be here today. Is going to be joining us in just a few seconds. So we are very glad about being here, and we are happy and excited about who is going to be joining us in just a few minutes. And we're just very, very, very excited about this show today. We've been talking about leadership for the last several weeks, and we've had some great shows and we've had some great broadcasts. And we just really want to encourage all of you to know that leadership is very important in our world, especially today. And we have lined up some great individuals to come and help us to determine how we can be better leaders. So today our guest is Dr. Liyongo Tolin, and we are happy to welcome to the broadcast. And he is going to talk to us about leadership, and we are excited about speaking to him about leadership. And Dr. Tolin, welcome to Under the Influence, and we're so glad to have you here today. How are you feeling?
Thanks. Appreciate you having me here. I'm feeling good. You know, it's been a long day with work and then coming home with the family, but it's all good. It's all good.
Good. Well, I'm glad that it's all good. And welcome to the broadcast today. So thank you so very much for coming. And we're going to get right into the show. And we just want you to just be yourself and just talk about, what is on your heart regarding leadership and how you can be a better leader in our community, and how we can do better in our community as leaders. And we're just really excited to have you here. So why don't you just begin by just telling us just a little bit about yourself and your professional background?
So, yeah, I could probably talk. I'll ramble too. So if I start talking too much, you can stop me whenever. I think in regards to what we'll be talking about today, the important thing is in regards to my background is I was a youth pastor and assistant pastor for 15 years. And currently as a member of the Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, I serve as a Sigma Beta Club advisor. So we have a youth auxiliary. They're called the Sigma Beta Club. So I'm an advisor. Not only am I an advisor, I'm actually the regional coordinator for our region, the Great Lakes. So 7 states, excluding the state of Ontario, because we have a chapter in Toronto, Ontario. A little bit more about my history. So a long time ago, I founded a group called God's Army. In God's Army, it was God's Army Ministry of Rap. And so I did Christian rap for the 15 plus years during the time when Christian rap, holy hip hop, however you wanted to verbalize it, was not accepted in the church. Also, like, secular arenas or avenues, they didn't want to hear it either. So we didn't really have an audience. But we pressed on, and so I humbly say that because a lot of the work that God's Army and the members of God's Army we put in, many years ago, it has allowed for the progression of music ministry, specifically for gospel rap, to be not only accepted, but in gospel music, probably the most popular gospel artists now are probably actually rappers, like Lecrae, even Kirk Franklin had his period of time when he was including a lot of rap on a lot of his songs. So that journey, and it actually, one of the things that being responsible for God's army, when I reflect back on it, I was young. So I was, my early 20s, mid 20s. I was married, actually. Praise God that my wife, she was extremely supportive during that time. And so at 24, 25 years old, the group grew as big as 25 members. And so I had members in the group. Being the leader, I had members that were older than me and I had a lot of members that were younger than me. And so I appreciated the fact that even though I was younger than the people that were older and even a lot more seasoned in regards to ministry and in music, they allowed me to be the leader that I was at that time, learn with the bumps and bruises or whatever. And then having a lot of young people, being responsible for young people. I was a big brother. I was a father. I was Uncle Lee to a lot. I'm still Uncle Lee to a lot of people. Yeah, I was Uncle Lee to a lot of people. I'm still Uncle Lee to them. And now they have kids, and I look and I'm like, man, it makes me feel old. But like I see some of the things that they do, or even they give me feedback, an appreciation for myself and for my wife for a lot of the things that we poured into them, whether it was intentional or unintentional. Like I remember one of the young ladies, she's an actress actually now in LA, and we had some dialogue recently, and she was just saying how she remembered how when we had our first house, our house wasn't wasn't really big yet. Every Tuesday and Thursday we rehearsed at my house. So if we rehearsed at my house every Tuesday and Thursday, that meant I had like 10, 15 teenagers in my house. And she was like, I remember your wife Shanta, she would come in from work, she would do her workout, and then she would cook for them, right? So we had literally a budget set aside to feed feed these young people. And then a lot of times with just the growing pains outside of God's army with a lot of the young people, their parents would reach out to Uncle Lee or Big Brother Lee. And I had to learn how to deal with walking them through the problem. So I'm saying it because I was a parent before I became a parent. So when I had my own kids, it was like, oh, like I already know how, of course times change, but it's like, man, I know how to deal with the dynamics of sisters not getting along. I know the dynamics of getting, with brothers don't get along, brothers and sisters, so a lot of the dynamics of having my own children, I actually had practice as I was, the head of God's army. So, like I said, I can ramble. So that I think that's probably a good place to actually end.
Well, that's really good, Lee, and thank you so much for sharing that. I was eventually going to get to God's army later on, but you already went there, so that's okay. But that's good. But when I met you, I listened to a little bit of your ministry, and I really thought that you had the pulse of young people. And that's why I really wanted to have you on the podcast. So I'm just going to go off script a little bit, based, and I already have sent you some of the questions, but I just want to just kind of flow with what I'm feeling right now, and just ask you. So you started off talking about God's army and the needs for God's army based on voids that you saw in the church. Let's talk about that right now. Do you believe that the church is effective in reaching young people?
Yeah, so
and you gotta be honest on this show.
I'm gonna be honest.
We don't cover it up.
Be honest.
Gotta be honest.
No, I'm gonna be honest. I'm saying that's like a loaded question, and
yeah.
a lot of people may not like what I'm about to say. So I just switched microphones, so I want to make sure you can still hear me.
I hear you well. Thank you.
All right, yeah. So um, the church. So so first the thing is of course that when you think about church, there's different you know denominations, right? So each denomination has a set of rules and principles that govern them, and so not even getting into how that affects the relationships of adults, right? So now you think about if adults have problems with the principles of their denominations and then dealing with each other. Now think about how kids that are trying to formulate their their own foundation spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, how it can affect them. And I'm gonna say, man, um, I say this, and people sometimes they look at me, they're like, huh? But church people are some of the worst people. Well, so let me. Church people are some of the most challenging people when it comes to loving others. So I won't say worse. When it comes to loving, like unconditional love, they put conditions on it, right? And so, one of the things, I was a big proponent of when people come to the church, it doesn't matter what issues they have in life. Like, let them come to church. If they are drunk, so what? Let them come to church. If they're homosexual, so what? Let them come to church. If they're right, but certain groups of church folks, they want people to correct their behavior before they come to church, right? So like all that stuff is inappropriate to bring into church, and that's not really, that wasn't how Jesus operated. He didn't say, get your life straight and then come to me. As a matter of fact, if we really look and examine the life of Christ, like Jesus really wasn't trying to hang out with the people that were in the church. He was trying to hang out with the people that wasn't in the church. And so that part like always vexes me that, you a preacher, you go to the church and you preaching to the choir, and it's not the choir. Well, the choir you should be preaching them based on what I'm saying, but you understand what I'm saying. Like you're preaching to the choir, and the whole goal is to get, the lost or the sick back in. And I think we do, and I'm saying as a church going person as a whole, I think the church does a really horrible job with true, authentic demonstration of love. They put too many conditions and qualifications on what needs to be done for you to just to come to church. This is, you're a visitor, you go to a church and you sit at, somebody's, favorite seat or pew, and they look at you like, like this is my seat, this is my pew. And like, that's not godly. That's not like loving, So like sometimes I just honestly, sometimes I get turned off by church folk because they just can be some really unloving, uncaring, nasty folks. And
so you think that then talking about that, and I agree with you 100%. You're talking about the attitude that quote unquote church folks display among themselves. So how do you feel like that has affected generations of young people that we're trying to reach right now in society?
They don't want to go to church. If that's what you're offering, I'm not buying it. Period. So I give you two examples from when I used to be a youth pastor, right? So there would be a couple of gentlemen that would come into the church that I was a youth and assistant pastor, and they wore like African type hats, right? But they're still hats. So no one ever told these men that they had to take their African hats off, right? The ushers, the pastor, nobody. So then I invite. My youth, we used to have youth, like the youth group in my home was bigger than the youth group at church because they felt comfortable coming, to my house to fellowship than having to deal with people like I'm saying now. So, I've had ushers would say, when a young person would come into the church, instead of even saying hi, hello, how you doing? The first thing that comes out their mouth is, you got to take that hat off. Okay. Like, and then, so they're looking 3 rows ahead and they see an adult with an African hat on. And they're like, well, you didn't even say hi to me. My first first interaction with you coming into the church is you got to take this hat off, and I'm looking ahead and I literally see a man with a hat on. You can argue about semantics about, well, it doesn't have a bill and all that, but it's a hat. It's covering his head. And so, so then getting the teen or the young person through that. And so another big issue I used to have with older church people, and they're not going to like what I'm going to say, the old school people is, they would come to me and they would say, Pastor Lee, your teens, they just, they see me and they just walk by me. They don't say nothing. So then my response is, okay, well, what did you say? Well, what you mean? What did I say? So if they walked by you and didn't say nothing, that means that you walked by them and didn't say anything as well. Well, okay. I understand respect and things of that nature, but what you're teaching that young person is that it's okay, because you walk by them just as well. So in their heads, they're thinking literally the same thing as you. So my response to them 100% of the time would be, this is what you're going to do. The next time that young person walks by you, what I need you to do is I need you to go up to that young person in love, introduce yourself to them, say how you doing and who you are. Then the next time, if they walk by you and they don't say nothing, then we got a problem. And then I'll deal with it. But if they walk by you and you and don't say nothing, then they coming to me saying the same thing. They're coming to me saying, but Uncle Lee, Kevin, he saw me and he walked by me and he ain't say nothing. So then what I'm supposed to say to them? Just because you older, they supposed to say something to you? It's not even right or wrong. It's understanding this generation and how they operate.
And that's a perfect segue into my next question here, because I was already going to ask you this question anyway. But there seems to be such a disconnect between the generations. And you talked about it a lot in that last example there. What's causing the disconnect? Why is it that the older generation, those individuals supposed to be elders, why is it that there's such a big disconnect in the generations?
I don't think that it's new, right? And so the disconnect that we have is the same disconnect that they had with the generation before them, which is the same disconnect that they had with the generation before them. And that they forgot. They forgot what they did and what they went through, and now they've made it and they've ascended, and they expect everyone to be where they are, right? So everybody, if you were a 70s child, Al Green, disco music was the music, right? But the generation before, your parents was like, no, it's the Temptations, this is Motown, right? Mm-hmm. And they poo-pooed on your music. If you were an 80s kid, right, it was, pop music. If you're my generation, late 80s, early 90s, it was hip hop. So, everyone forgets that they had their own, styles, their own music, their own way of doing things. And then, once you, committed yourself to the Lord, it's like they forget. Like they think that, like, because they've ascended or they, they're in the place that they are, it's almost like they forgot about who the old man or the old woman is or was. And so the ability to allow grace and mercy to people makes church people cold and unloving. And they want people to get to the rules or get to that place, like, without understanding or remembering that none of them got there like that either.
That's really good. And that's a good point. Remembering that every generation is pretty much essentially the same. It's just that the time period has changed, but the same struggles, same issues is pretty much the same. And you're right. And a lot of adults have forgotten what it was like. So I want to now just kind of tie this next question into that. So if the older generations are forgetting and they're not doing what they should to close that gap, how are we going to be able to prepare these current generations for leadership?
They're gonna have to wake up. I mean, so if they want to not lose this generation, they need to listen to them, and again, they need to remember how they felt when they were going through and when they weren't listened to and how they were treated, so that they don't reciprocate, which to me, most that's the disconnect, or that's the issue, is most reciprocate. They do the same thing that was done to them by the elders before them, even though they despised or did not like it, right? Or even if they felt like it was ineffective, they still don't remember that. And then they perpetuate that and they continue it, and it becomes, it's like a vicious, it's a vicious cycle. And so at some point there has to be a consciousness about, hey, remembering my journey, understanding the challenges that I had through my journey, and now understanding that for the most part, there's nothing new under the sun. The journey, the struggles that are had now are only magnified because there's social media and things like that. So it's quick access to things, right? But bullying, sexual promiscuity, drug, all that, none of the vices really are different. They're maybe more readily accessible, but they're no different. So in that, remembering whatever your vice was and your journey through it, it really should make you more suited and prepared to actually help those that are having those issues now. I have one of my biggest issues with just dealing with people, period, is not understanding or not demonstrating the ability to allow grace and mercy in situations, and forgetting their own journey. And not only that, being in a place of understanding, so that if I wrong you, right, I do something that makes you upset, and I don't know I did something that makes you upset, and then you don't let me know, I'm going to keep doing it. And so if I keep doing it, it's going to keep making you upset, right? And I'm making you upset, but I don't know. Well, whose fault is that? Is it my fault? But in your head, you're going to be blaming me because I keep doing it, but you never did anything to address the situation. So it goes back to the whole thing with how the adult dealt with the kid with the greeting. Well, if the kid keeps walking by and you never deal with it, then you're going to always be upset with the kid, and you're not even going to be in a place to listen to the kid's journey, where they are, because it's going to be all about you, and it's not going to be about them. And that's difficult for people, because we are inherently selfish and egocentric.
Mm-hmm. So those are really, really good points that you brought up, Lee. I really want to talk about that more, but I want to talk about the educational system that our children are coming up in. We know where the church has failed, and we know we got a lot of work to do there. But I want to talk about your thoughts about our educational system. Do you feel like our educational system is preparing our young people for leadership? And what are the issues that are going on there?
Yeah, so that's a layered and complex question, because first of all, our educational system it's unbalanced, right? So if you are urban, right, you're in most public schools. Even if you're in a public school in a well-off district, you're still behind the 8 ball for those who get private education, right? So don't be in a public institution. I'm talking about K through 12 right now, and be in an urban setting, because the resources that are available to you are significantly less, right? And then so you will hear many people talk about the U.S. system post 12 is it's all about making money, right? So why is it that if I went to Wayne State and I'm a physical therapist, I got my doctorate in physical therapy, right? And if you went and got your doctorate from Harvard, our doctorate is the same. You're not. So now there are some places in academia where the degree where you get it from is going to play a significant role on your or bearing on your salary. But I'm saying, if you have a doctorate in physical therapy from Harvard and you have a doctorate in physical therapy from Wayne State, and then we're applying for a job as a physical therapist, we're going to get paid the same amount of money. Now, but people that don't understand the financial repercussions of that, they'll pursue to go to Harvard when they can't afford Harvard, and they take out all these student loans, and then you're paying for the student loans until you die, when you could have got that same education at another institution. But we're going towards, this name of Harvard. Now, I do understand that there are certain careers. You talk about politics, even business or lawyers, where that may play a role. But for the everyday person, it's that kind of stuff really almost doesn't matter. And then we don't really college. So college isn't for everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are careers that people can make just as much, and not, if not even more money than those of us with degrees with skilled trades. You know what I mean? And it doesn't take as much schooling, and then they don't have to take out the amounts of loans for those of us that had to do that in order to get their career. I remember recently going back and forth with people in regards to because I'm still paying on student loans, and so those of those of us waiting on Biden to fulfill that promise of of eliminating some student loans. And
Don't hold your breath, my friend. Don't hold your breath.
I'm not holding my breath, but you have a lot of people, and I understand, but they're like, well, it's unfair. Where's the money gonna come from? Da 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 da. And it's like, okay, well, not that it's not just because it's me, but look at how many people were in my position. And so to go to college, I had to work like a dog to a certain point and then take out student loans. If I didn't take out student loans, I couldn't go to college, right? That's not the same as the person who lives on the other side of 8 Mile who has the resources. So that's the unbalanced part of that unbalanced part I'm talking about. So some people can afford to do it. So you're now telling me because I come from poverty or this certain neighborhood, then tough luck. You just can't get this education, because that's how some people feel. They're like, well, they shouldn't have took out the student loans to do it. Well, if I didn't take the student loans out, I wouldn't have been able to get the education, period. And so because it's unbalanced, right? People can argue about the fairness of it, but it's unbalanced. This is the only option or choice I have. Now, I'm gonna say, I see unbalance because my kids, my 2 older kids went to a private school for high school, and my youngest she's doing the same thing. And the resources available, the money that's given back to the school by the alumni and the parents, man. So, and I'm saying this not hating on it, right? Because absolutely, this is a good thing, right? But the same energy doesn't go towards people that are in lesser schools or public schools. So we pay tuition, and my daughter automatically gets a trip to Washington, to go visit the monument, or summer camp here, or what I mean. I went to Cass. We didn't get it. We didn't get that. I'm not hating on my counselor, but my kids get college counseling. They got it, guidance, the journey, the map, the blueprint from the 9th grade until the 12th. I didn't get anything, right? I did the work, just fortunate I had that drive, and my group, the group that I was with, Des Pennington, shout out to Des and Maurice Morton, we just had that drive to do it on our own. But those resources weren't as accessible, as they are in these private type institutions. So that's kind of like that unbalance, the unbalance, that I was trying to talk about. So how do you even
interesting there? You are a graduate of Cass Technical High School.
Proud graduate of Cass Tech.
So, and that's good, very proud graduate of Cass Tech, very good, which is probably still the best college prep high school in the city of Detroit. But what you're saying there is, even though you went to Cass Tech, which is still known as a college prep high school, you still notice a disparity between Cass and what your children are getting in the suburbs, or excuse me, in private school.
Correct. So what I say about Cass is I was fortunate. So I was in the curriculum that I was in. It absolutely it prepared me for the academic part. So I no, there's no ifs, ands about, like, I was prepared academically for that. It's a lot of resources though, a lot of understanding, a lot of life things though that my kids going through the private school that they go to have access to. Like I didn't get it, or I had to find it on my own, right? And so, my oldest daughter, she was an editor when she was in high school. She was an editor of. So they got all these magazines. We had a school newspaper, but they get any club you can think of, like they have. So she's an editor of a magazine. She writes an article or for the paper, and then the teacher submits it to some other organization, and so now she's in these contests that the public schools don't know about. My son, when he was in high school, when he was a senior, he did a self portrait. The school put it in a contest, a congressional contest, and he won. And because he won, so his self portrait was in the halls of Congress for 2 years, and he won a trip to go visit Brenda Lawrence, who was the person who picked it in the rep at the time. I'm saying, like, that kind of stuff, like someone at Cass got to do some extra legwork to find out about. My son didn't have to do no legwork because the school did it. So that's the disparity. So I'm saying, no doubt Cass prepared me, but there's still some things, that Cass just, doesn't have that some of these other, private institutions have. And I mean, arguably, I say our alumni base for Cass is strong. Like, it's big, our network is big, but still, man, it just doesn't compare. I see this firsthand.
Yeah, it's Cass Tech has a great alumni base, and you have some great people graduate from Cass in all areas of society. But you mentioned something else that I have always felt is very, very important to preparing our young people, not just for leadership, but for success in life. And that is exposure. Exposure is extremely key to helping them to develop the right type of global perspective. Why is it that we have some young people that get the exposure and then others that don't get the exposure?
Yeah, so part of it, again, is background. Background meaning, like, where do you come from? Absolutely, the financial resources, and then the people that are in your advising circle. So I'm using myself as an example. So when I was at Cass, again, like, Cass absolutely prepared me for college. I was self-driven though. My mom, in regards to, like, college education and that, that journey, she just didn't have the knowledge to help as much, even with just like filling out the financial aid, papers and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't, part of that is probably me at that time, but I didn't get the guidance, through school as well. But I had a drive that, like, I always wanted to be literally what I am now, and nothing was going to prevent me from doing that. So I'm sure that I'm saying I can speak for at least my generation of Cass technicians in the mid to late 80s. Like, a lot of us were like that. And it was like, we went out and found stuff, right? So I went out and found, they had explorer clubs. And so I found an explorer club at the University of Detroit for dentistry, and I joined it. I found an explorer club at Henry Ford for doctors and nurses. And so, a lot of my classmates, were the same way. So I'm saying, it seems like now that would be easier because resources available, the internet, at your fingertips. But so enough, in the same breath, using my own child, my son, when he was going to getting ready for college, I searched high and low for scholarships and gave him the information, and he just didn't look at it.
Yeah, that's and that's going to lead me into my next question here, because I also give scholarships to Michigan high school students. Work with an organization that does. We've been doing it for the last 7 years. We cannot get students from the Detroit Public Schools to apply. The only students that apply from Detroit are those who actually attend Cass Tech. And I don't want to make this broadcast about Cass Tech.
Yeah.
I'm one of your biggest haters. But, you know, but the reality is this. What do we do about those students? Like you mentioned often, you were self-driven. You had the motivation. You went after it. You know, your mother wasn't particularly the greatest influence. And we got a lot of kids like that. They come up in environments where they're not getting the guidance, not getting the direction. Some of their parents don't even care. They got their own litany of, you know, issues to deal with. What do we do about those students who need that drive, need that determination put in them? How do we get them to begin to start looking at their lives more, you know, productively without the influences that maybe you or I have or did not have?
So one thing I want to clarify. It wasn't that my mom just didn't have the knowledge. She helped as best she could. She just was limited in her own knowledge. So she did the best with what she had, you know, at her table. And as a matter of fact, my drive is because I saw her work so hard. And so my work ethic comes from that. So I want to be clear. I don't want people to think that my mother, you know, she wasn't helping or helpful, because she was. I'm just saying that there was and it still is. There's a breakdown even now with people's ability to understand the resources available and how to utilize them to do it. So you're saying like you give scholarships away, right? So my organization, we talk about this. We just had our regional conference. We talk about our collegiates. We have scholarships available for our collegiates, and they just not applying, right? One of my frat brothers, Dennis Williams, he's in another organization, 100 Black Men. They have an oratorical contest every year. They give scholarships. Like, we be begging for people to come. And like this year, I can say we had a couple of cast people that came out. It's supposed to be seniors. My daughter's a junior. She was there, and she participated. Renaissance brought a gang of people. So it's like, I don't know, like, it's resources are out there. I don't know in regards to specifically with, you know, the scholarships and things of that nature. I don't understand what the breakdown is. Why some you look at Facebook and you see some kids, they got $1 million in scholarships, you know, from 50 universities, and then you have some kids who can't even find, you know, they only have one. You know, is it because they aren't looking, they're not active, they don't care, they don't have, like, I honestly I don't know, but I hear you and I feel you on that, because like the organizations I'm in and people I know, it's the same thing. We have money to give away. We want to give the money away. We feel like we're doing a good job with broadcasting it and putting it out there, but like people just, I don't know what it is. People just, you know, they're not answering the call to that.
Well, you know, you mentioned something, you know, and again, no disrespect to your mom, because most parents would say, I did the very best that I could do. Most of them would be quick to say that, but you did mention the key word there, which is knowledge. And so when I talk about the knowledge gap that exists with a lot of parents, for example, when you're talking about exposure, there are some children who have parents that will say, hey, you're going to get in this club. You're going to play this sport. You're going to go to these after school activities. You're going to learn music. You're going to go, you're going to take a trip to Italy. You're going to do, I mean, you got some parents that is, you know, from the earliest that their children can understand, they've already got it mapped out that these are the things that their children need to do to be successful in life. And they make the sacrifices necessary to do that. There are some parents that truthfully don't care. And a lot of it is not necessarily because they don't have the knowledge, because a lot of them do have the knowledge, but they don't really see the future of their child. They don't see, their thing is, you know, go get yourself a good job because I'm not going to take care of you past 18, you know. And so now all of a sudden these kids have this pressure on them, you know, that, you know, I got to go to work, you know, and many of them, even before they graduate from high school, they got to go to work. And so, and many of them, they got to go to work because they have to go take care of their parents who don't work or don't want to work. So when we're looking at the two extremes, the two dichotomies of how many of our children are growing up, is that part of the disadvantage, that we have parents that really don't want to make enough of an investment in their children's future in order to give them that opportunity.
Right. So absolutely. So of course you have parents that I don't think that's the majority of parents by any means. I think just innately that a parent wants their child to succeed. So while you may have a small percentage of parents who don't care, I think the challenges of today, just the challenges of dealing with kids, raising kids. Sometimes I think that we have a percentage of parents who maybe don't care. You have a percentage of parents who care and they try, but they're having unique challenges with their kids, and then that causes issues. You have some who lack the knowledge, and so because they lack the knowledge, it causes a lack of impartation onto their kids. But part of it is, what does the parent, as you stated, what does the parent see in regards to the future of their child? And then part of it also is, what have we been doing to lay the foundation down for our kids? Have we been doing too much for them? Not allowing them to develop, work ethic. So that's, again, I go back to, my mom, she was a high school graduate. She did a little college. And what she didn't know about college, she imparted in me a work ethic and a drive and the desire, and always supportive of my dreams, and whatever she could in her power, making sure that she could help fulfill them. And so what I do as a parent is literally the same thing my mom did. I just have more knowledge and better resources. So I'm gonna say this, giving props to my mom, because me and my wife's doctorate as well, we make decent money. And man, I look back and I be like, man, I'm my friends always talk about, oh, Lee, you rich. Man, I'm rich poor, right? I'm rich poor. And so I be thinking about, man, like my mother didn't make as much money as I did. And I, how she did what she did, you know what I'm saying, is it's incredible. And because of that, it gave me my drive, and it gave me the blueprint on how I could do and what I could do for my kids. Now, I want to mention one thing you brought up. This is something that I dealt with. Two things. So one, I deal with my own children, and then in regards to the parenting and dealing with our European counterparts, right, and sacrifices we make. So one of the things I think that our culture, being African American, I think one of the things that we do that puts our children at a disadvantage is what you said. When you graduate high school, like, you're on your own. Like, we rear our kids so that when, like, graduating high school is the ultimate, goal. And like, you go to college, that's fine. But when you graduate college, you're grown. No, you're not. You're still a kid. And so, my next door neighbor, is Chaldean, they got grown kids and families in the home, right? And people will look at that and they'll be like, man, they got 3-4 families in there, but they happy, right? They're financially set because they don't kick their kids out just because they're 18. And we African Americans, we kind of were brought up with, like, once you get to 18, well, I did it, you can do it too. And so that's a conversation. Now, I don't want my kids in my house until I retire, but I've had the conversation with my kids. Don't ever feel like you gotta leave just because you 23, 25. Nope. I want you to be here. I want you to be able to gain financial wealth. And I want you to leave when you feel like you're ready to leave. And I think we, and I could be wrong, but I think as a culture, African Americans, we have done a really poor job with that. We've always seemed like we want to kick our kids out. And the other part is the resources and the drive in regards to our parents or parenting. So I had this conversation with my European counterparts. At the time, I lived in Commerce. So for those watching, Commerce is like 30-minute drive from Metro Detroit. My son was able to get a partial scholarship to go to this private school that's in Grosse Pointe. That's 30 minutes east of Detroit, which meant that to get him to school, it was an hour, right? And I remember sitting at a table. I'm the only Black person, and it's all white people there. And I'm telling them, yeah, my son's going to go to this school, and, oh man, these are the resources. These are things they have, blah, 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 blah. These are the things that can happen. And they're all looking at me like, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just send him to the neighborhood school? And I'm like, because the neighborhood school doesn't have the resources at this private school. And they're like, yeah, well, I would just send my kid, to the neighborhood school. Like, I don't see what all the trouble is. Like, why are you going through that? Right. So now, if I was to be able to sit down with them at that table now, I could say, yep, well, because I sent my son to that school, he went to Congress. He had his artwork in Congress for free. Every year he was in high school, that school sent him, when I say a trip, I'm not talking about I'm talking about DC, Philly, like they went on a trip every year. My son got the presidential scholarship at Hampton, right? So these are resources that I knew that were going to be available to my kids if I made these small sacrifices. Well, let me correct myself. Because me and my wife made this decision, right? It wasn't just me, right? So if it meant, we ended up having to move closer, right, to a closer suburb, to make it less of a burden, to get there. But if it resulted in what we knew would happen, man, we're gonna make it happen. So my son becomes a presidential, scholar at Hampton, graduates with honors. My daughter gets a full scholarship at the private school, and then gets accepted to Columbia University, and presently is studying abroad in Germany. And she's been to Portugal, Spain, England, Scotland, Italy. I'm missing a couple. Why? Because of the stuff that they taught her at this private school. And then because the two older kids were such good students and citizens, and when you find, I'm just being honest, when you find good Black kids and you in some place like that, they want another good Black kid. Mm-hmm. So that institution came and was like, hey, we know you got a 7th grader or 6th grader that don't go here. And they coming and asking us, what do we need to do to get her over here? So now we at the table, and then now we can make demands to get our child there, and so she can have, a similar path. So I'm saying people people will look at me like, man, my daughter drives, she's a junior now. She drives 45 minutes to get to school, 45 minutes back. She got track practice. She not here to 8 o'clock. And people be like, well, that's too much. That's too much. Nope. Because guess what? My daughter's going to get to the university that she wants to go in. I guarantee you that. Ain't too many guarantees in life you have, but I guarantee you, whatever college that last one want to go to, she going to get in. And that's because of the sacrifices that me, my wife, and her siblings have made to get her to that point.
So, Lee, you just said a mouthful, man, and I'm going to tell you we're going to have you back in the future because we just need to continue this. There's just so much more. But I want to talk to you. You mentioned something, and I got to hit this as we're starting to wrap up here. You talked about how you were looking at some young people on Facebook that had gotten like $1 million worth of scholarships. How big is social media in influencing our young people to either have that drive and have that initiative, or to fall back and say, I'm not doing that. I'm gonna be the next Jay-Z, or I'm gonna be the next, and like you said earlier, college isn't for everybody. And I fully agree with that, because it takes a particular type of discipline to be a college student, and to finish it, you gotta have a plan. But also, being a rap artist, being an entertainer, being all that. That's not for everybody either. But a lot of these young people, they look at all of these influencers. You know, they look at Beyonce, they look at Jay-Z, they look at Cardi B, they look at Megan Thee Stallion, they look at all these folks now. And it's like, I want to be that next person. But that is not for them either. But this is what they're seeing on social media. How much is social media? Let me ask it this way. The pros and cons of social media as it pertains to getting our young people ready for their future.
Right. So the pros is absolutely the ability to be seen and to get information. So you can put yourself out there, right? So, but there's a con to that because you can put yourself out there too much and people don't want to see you. You can make mistakes and put stuff out, and then now once it's out there, you can't get it back. And so and then social media brings on a whole different beast in regards to bullying. So you have a lot of young people that don't want to be involved in social media because they don't even want to enter that avenue, because social media bullying or cyberbullying, that's that's a beast that we didn't have to deal with or worry about, right? So you look at how influential social media is. Well, if social media is all that, and now someone has benefited off of the degradation of you, then I don't want to be involved in social media, at all. So it's important. I know when I joined my fraternity, some of like you see now, brothers, they used to clown me. They'd be like, "Oh, he's Super Sigma." Nope, everything is intentional. So somebody seeing this, they're gonna see, "Oh man, Sigma Beta, what is that?" Right? Yep, Sigma Beta Club. It's a youth auxiliary that my fraternity helps to mentor young men. So someone, hopefully will be able to see that, and then someone might tag you or tag me, to question that. So, but social media, I mean, it's a blessing, but it can also be a curse, especially for these young people. I don't know if I answered that really sufficiently.
I think you did, without going into a great deal of depth. We could have, gone a few more places with that, but that was good. So I want to talk about, as we wrap up, this will be, my last question, and I'm going to go back to where we started, which was ministry. But don't want to just start the ministry. I want to talk about ministry. I want to talk community. I want to talk education, and asking this question. Our young people have been constantly disrespected and told that they don't have the ability to be good leaders. How do we change that narrative so that we can help build the self-esteem of our young people, to let them know that they do have the ability to lead and that they can be great? What do we need to do in order to help our young people become great?
So first, remember how our journey was. It wasn't easy, right? So don't repeat the mistakes that we made going through. So we remember how it felt to be disrespected. So stop disrespecting. We remember how it was to not be encouraged or built up. So encourage and build up. So, I mean, I might be oversimplifying it, but it really is that simple, right? People just want to be, at the end of the day, everyone wants to they want to feel needed, right? And so that's all we got to do, encourage and build people up. Sometimes people are so afraid of others doing better. Who cares? Who cares? Like, it's not about if, my neighbor's child is doing, no, like, I hope my neighbor's child does good because it's going to make it better for my child. But people don't always look at it. It's not a competition. So, I teach, I'm adjunct faculty too, and I teach in a professional program. And so in the professional program, because we're no longer dealing with prereqs, the approach is really what I'm trying to say now is it's not a challenge. You are a family. And so everyone from here on out should be working together to make sure that all of you complete this program. None of you should fail or flunk out because none of you, the seats are taken. You have the seat. So if you have the seat, you need to do everything you need to do to make sure you maintain your seat, but no child left behind. It shouldn't be it shouldn't be just cliche. It should be for real. One of the things Try not to talk too long. I know we got to wrap up. But one of the things you talk about education, leadership. One of the things, even going back to like, before God's army, man, when I first really got involved with the church, I used to bring the teenage men back to, we had in our apartment. We lived in me and my wife's apartment. I would just bring them to the apartment after church on the weekend. Play basketball with them. I wasn't trying to preach to them. I wasn't trying to teach them nothing. I was just hanging out with them, right? And letting them play games, letting them be them, right? And so now while they're doing that though, they're seeing me working. They're seeing me working and trying to get an education. They see me trying to be a good husband at 24 years old. So, again, so we talk about ministry. I'm just being a letter. I'm being an epistle. I'm living. I'm not preaching. I'm not talking. I'm not condemning. I'm just being a person, hopefully a person that they are looking up to, that they want to emulate. You know what I'm saying? So I had people that as I was coming up that I wanted to emulate, and I wanted to try to put myself in a position where young men and young women would look at me and my wife. We have couples that, I have people that say that I'm their mentor, or couples that talk about me and my wife like we're their mentors, and there was no intention in regards to the ministry. You know what I'm saying? It's just we just did what we did, and it's like we look back now and we're like, oh yeah, I can see that, but all the time these people were looking at us, right? They're looking at how we act, they're looking at how we deal with each other, they're looking at how we deal, with them, and then it's like, oh okay, I get it. So how do we do it? Build the people up, encourage, make people feel. I go back to what I said before. The church can be some of the most unloved. Just love people. Like for real, just love people. It's not really hard. It's not hard at all.
Well, you know what? We're going to have to, just loving people, we're going to have another. I got to have you back, Lee. So when I give you that invitation to come back and we do part 2 of this, because there's so much more that we left on the table, so much more we got to unpack. And right now we got to wrap this up. But I want to thank you for being on the broadcast today. You were great. My producer is, jumping out of her seat because she's just, excited about everything you said. Tell the people, if people want to get in touch with you, if they want to contact you, reach out to you, maybe ask you some personal questions, follow up with you based on this, what's the best way for people to reach you?
Yep. So the best way, so it kind of depends, right? It depends on how you want it, what you need, right? So professionally, like if you need a good physical therapist, my email is ltolin@dmc.org. If you have a young man who needs to be mentored and he is age 8 to 18, you can email me at sigmabeta@greatlakes.org. If you just want to kick it, just on the slide, you see my first name right there, Liyongo@comcast.net. Hit me up and we can go from there.
Very good. And what I want you to do after the broadcast, if you email me all of those email addresses, because after we mix down this tape, I'm going to have my producer put them into the final editing so we can make sure that we get them out to the people, because that's good information. And we want our listening audience and our viewing audience to take advantage of all of that. Lee, thank you so very much, my brother, for coming and being a part of this. We are going to have you back very soon. We got to continue this. The hour went by fast. It always does. But we got so much more we got to unpack. But thank you so very much for your willingness. And we will see you again very, very soon. Thank you. And God bless you. We keep doing the good work.
Thank you for having me, man. Be blessed.
Thank you. Well, family, there you have it. Another excellent episode of Under the Influence. And we're so thankful that we had Dr. Liyongo Tolin come and he dropped some nuggets on us regarding young people in leadership. Man, that was so good. And I hope that all of you who are viewing just got a lot out of that. I want to encourage you to continue to follow us Mondays at 7 o'clock Under the Influence. We view live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and coming soon, we're going to be on Apple Podcasts as well. But we want to continue to encourage you to view our broadcast, pass on the information, have other people join us, because we talk about leadership from various perspectives, and we would love to have you guys look in on us. And thank you very much for joining us tonight. Big shout out to my producer, Charlene Dexter Ashley. Thank you. My technical advisor, Mr. Marcel Copeland, and all of those who have to make this broadcast go smoothly. Thank you. And again, Under the Influence with your host, me, Kevin Binion. And remember, everybody, leaders lead from the front. Have a good night. We'll see you next week.